The rain in the city of Detroit didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind that felt heavy, pressing down on the shoulders of everyone walking the cracked sidewalks of the 4th District. Daniel Brooks stood under the rusted awning of Miller's Stationery and Supplies, watching the water cascade off the rim of the metal roof. At 42, Daniel looked 10 years older. His beard was flecked with gray, thick and unkempt, hiding a jawline that had once been clenched in determination during night raids in Kandahar. Now it was mostly clenched in silence. He wore a canvas jacket that had seen better days, stained with grease from the auto repair shop where he worked shifts that were too long for pay. That was too short. He wasn't waiting for anyone. He was simply waiting for the number 12 bus, the diesel-chugging beast that would take him back to his small, empty apartment on the outskirts of town. Daniel was a man who occupied space but rarely inhabited it. Since his medical discharge from the Navy SEALs 6 years ago, he had built a perimeter around his life. No visitors, no close friends, no emotional entanglements. Survival in the civilian world, he had learned, was about minimizing exposure. He shifted his weight, wincing slightly. The shrapnel wound in his left thigh flared up when the barometric pressure dropped. He ignored the pain. Pain was old information. His body was just reminding him it was still there. "Excuse me, sir?" The voice was so small it barely registered over the sound of the rain hitting the pavement. Daniel didn't move at first. His training had taught him to filter out non-threatening noises, and this sounded like the flutter of a bird's wing. "Sir?" Daniel turned his head slowly. The movement was fluid, predatory, a habit he couldn't break. Down to his left, standing just outside the dry circle of the awning, was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 11 years old. She was drenched. Her hair, a dark tangle of curls, was plastered to her forehead. She wore a pink windbreaker that was 2 sizes too small and offered zero protection against the chill. Her jeans were frayed at the hems, dragging in the puddles, and her sneakers, cheap canvas things, were splitting at the toes, revealing soaked socks. But it was her arms that caught Daniel's attention. She was clutching a stack of 3 battered notebooks and a few loose textbooks against her chest, wrapping her body around them in a desperate attempt to keep them dry. She was shivering violently, but her grip on those books was ironclad. Daniel looked at her, his eyes cold and assessing. He didn't smile. "What?" His voice was a low gravel, unused to casual conversation. The girl swallowed hard. She looked terrified of him. Daniel knew he was intimidating. He was 6'2" of scarred muscle and bad memories. But she didn't run. I didn't mean to bother you," she stammered, her teeth chattering. "My name is Maya. I see you here sometimes waiting for the bus." Daniel said nothing. He just waited. "I need..." She paused, looking down at her wet shoes, then back up at his face, searching for a trace of kindness. "I need a backpack. My old one broke. The strap snapped and the bottom fell out. My books fell in the mud yesterday." She squeezed the books tighter, protecting them from the blowing rain. "I don't have any money," she rushed on, the words tumbling out now that she had started. "My mom, she's working double shifts at the diner, but the rent went up and she said we can't afford extras right now. But I can't carry these. I can't let them get wet again. If the school books get ruined, we have to pay for them. And we can't pay." Daniel looked at the books. Education. It seemed like such a trivial thing to worry about when you didn't have a waterproof coat. But to this girl, those books were clearly more valuable than her own comfort. "Why are you asking me?" Daniel asked, his tone flat. "Because you look like you fix things," Maya said, a strange mix of innocence and intuition in her eyes. "And you look like you keep your promises." She took a breath, shivering again. "If you buy me a backpack, just a cheap one from the clearance bin inside, I promise I'll pay you back. I collect cans on weekends. I walk Mrs. Gable's dog. I'll bring you $2 every week until it's paid, I promise. Please." The bus was due in 4 minutes. Daniel looked down the street. The headlights were not yet visible. He looked back at Maya. She was trembling, not just from cold, but from the sheer humiliation of begging. He knew that look. He had seen it in villages halfway across the world. The look of someone who has exhausted all other options and is forced to rely on the mercy of a stranger. Mercy wasn't a tool Daniel used often. It usually got people killed in his line of work. But this wasn't a war zone. This was a sidewalk in America. "Come on," Daniel said abruptly. He turned and pushed open the door to Miller's stationery. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully, a stark contrast to the gray misery outside. Maya hesitated, stunned, before scrambling to follow him, wiping her wet shoes on the mat as she entered. The store smelled of paper, glue, and cheap plastic. It was warm, and Maya instantly stopped shivering, though her clothes were still dripping onto the linoleum floor. The clerk, a man named Miller who spent most of his time reading newspapers behind the counter, looked up over his spectacles. He saw Daniel, a regular customer who usually only bought black pens and electrical tape. And then he saw the dripping, wet child trailing behind him. Miller frowned but said nothing. Daniel didn't look at the aisle with the colorful cartoon-themed backpacks. He walked past the rows of glittery unicorns and neon superheroes. He knew those bags. They were made of thin nylon, stitched with weak thread. They would rot in a month and tear in two. They were built to be sold, not to last. He went to the back of the store, to the outdoor and utility section. This was where the overpriced, heavy-duty gear was kept. The stuff meant for hiking or heavy labor. "Stay there," Daniel commanded without looking back at Maya. She froze near the entrance, hugging her books. Daniel scanned the shelf. His eyes moved with the precision of a scanner. He wasn't looking for fashion. He was looking for structural integrity. He picked up a black backpack, reinforced stitching at the stress points, waterproof canvas, likely 600 denier, heavy-duty zippers that wouldn't jam with a little dirt, padded shoulder straps to distribute weight effectively. It was ugly. It was severe. It looked like something a tactical team would carry, not a sixth-grade girl. It cost $80, a significant chunk of Daniel's weekly grocery budget. He pulled it off the shelf. He tested the weight. He tugged hard on the top handle, testing the tensile strength. It held. "This one," Daniel muttered to himself. He didn't stop there. He walked to the aisle with the stationery. He grabbed a pack of high-grade mechanical pencils, the kind used by draftsmen, not the cheap yellow ones that snapped. He grabbed a set of waterproof notebooks, a heavy steel ruler, and a high-end geometry set. He walked to the counter and dumped the pile. Miller raised an eyebrow. "Going back to school, Mr. Brooks?" "Ring it up," Daniel said, ignoring the question. "That's the Titan X pack," Miller noted, tapping the register. "Top of the line. Lifetime warranty." "Bit overkill for a kid, don't you think?" "Survival isn't overkill," Daniel said softly. "It's necessity." Maya was watching from a distance, her eyes wide. She saw the black bag. It didn't look like the ones the other girls had. It looked serious. She felt a knot of anxiety. That bag looked expensive. "Sir," she whispered as Daniel swiped his card. I can't pay for that one. The ones in the bin are only $10. Daniel turned to her, handing the receipt to Miller to trash. He picked up the bag. It looked massive in his hands. "You said your old one broke because it was weak," Daniel said, walking over to her. He didn't crouch down. He spoke to her like an adult. "In my life, gear failure is not an option. If your gear fails, you fail. If you fail, you don't make it home." He held the bag out to her. "This won't break. You can drag this through the mud, the snow, and the rain. It will keep your things dry. It will protect what matters." Maya reached out and took it. It was heavier than she expected, the material thick and stiff. "Open it," Daniel said. She unzipped the main compartment. He had already stuffed the new supplies inside: the professional pencils, the waterproof notebooks, the steel ruler. "Tools," Daniel said, "not toys. You treat them with respect, they take care of you." Maya looked up at him, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know how long it will take me to pay $80. It might take a year." Daniel looked at the door. The bus was pulling up outside, its air brakes hissing. "You don't pay me back in money," Daniel said. his voice low and intense. "That's not the currency we deal in." "Then how?" Maya asked, a tear finally spilling over. "You fill it," Daniel said. "You fill that bag with knowledge. You fill it with grades that get you out of this neighborhood. You use the tools. You become dangerous." "Dangerous?" Maya blinked, confused. "Smart is dangerous," Daniel said, opening the door for her. "Smart changes things. Stupid stays the same. Be dangerous, Maya." He walked out into the rain, leaving her standing in the warmth of the store, clutching the black tactical backpack like it was a shield. She watched him limp toward the bus, a solitary figure disappearing into the gray evening. She didn't know it then, but the transaction wasn't over. Daniel had left something else in the bag, something he hadn't shown her. Maya ran the 3 blocks home, clutching the new backpack against her chest, even though Daniel had said it was waterproof. Old habits died hard. When she burst into the small 2-room apartment she shared with her mother, the smell of boiled cabbage and stale cigarette smoke hit her. Her mother wasn't home yet. The double shift at the diner wouldn't end until midnight. Maya stripped off her wet coat and sat on the floor near the radiator, the only source of heat in the apartment. She set the black backpack down in front of her. In the dim light of the apartment, the bag looked like a monolith. It was pitch black, with tactical webbing on the front and heavy, silent zippers. It looked out of place on the peeling linoleum floor. She ran her fingers over the rough canvas. It felt indestructible. For the first time in her life, she owned something that wasn't second-hand, something that wasn't falling apart. It made her feel stronger. She opened the main compartment again to organize her wet books. She pulled out the high-quality supplies Daniel had bought. The mechanical pencils were heavy metal, cool to the touch. The ruler was solid steel, sharp-edged and precise. As she reached into the deepest pocket of the bag, the one meant for a hydration bladder or a laptop, her fingers brushed against something cold and hard. It wasn't a book. She frowned and pulled it out. It was a small, black waterproof box, about the size of a hardback book. It was locked with a simple latch. There was a sticky note attached to the top in handwriting that was jagged and sharp. All caps. "Standard operating procedure." Maya's heart hammered in her chest. Had the man, Daniel, put this in there? Or had he forgotten it? Was it a mistake? She undid the latch. The box hissed slightly as the airtight seal broke. Inside, nestled in protective foam, was not money and not jewelry. It was a tablet, an older model, ruggedized, with a thick rubber case. It looked like military surplus or something used on construction sites. Beside it was a solar charger that could be clipped to the outside of the backpack. Maya gasped. She didn't have a computer. She did her homework at the library, waiting in line for the 30 minutes of internet time allowed per kid. She pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't password protected. The background was plain black. There were no games installed, no social media apps. There was a folder on the desktop labeled The Mission. Trembling, she tapped the folder. Inside were hundreds of PDF files. Mathematics, algebra to calculus, physics, mechanics and thermodynamics, English literature, the classics, strategic thinking, the art of war, engineering basics, coding for beginners, and there was one text file labeled Read Me First. Maya clicked it. The text was stark white against the black background. "Maya, this device is not a toy, it is an archive. It contains the curriculum of the best private schools in the country. I have downloaded it all for you. The internet is a distraction. This drive is a weapon. If you learn what is on this drive, you will not need to beg for a backpack ever again. You will own the factory that makes them. Do not tell anyone you have this. Keep it hidden. Keep it safe. The mission starts tomorrow. D." Maya sat back, the breath leaving her lungs. He hadn't just given her a bag to carry her books. He had given her a library. He had given her a curriculum. But why? Why her? Why a stranger? She looked at the bag, then at the tablet. She felt a sudden, heavy weight settle on her shoulders. It wasn't the weight of the bag, it was the weight of expectation. Daniel hadn't asked for money. He had asked for her to become dangerous. She picked up the steel ruler. She opened her wet, soggy math textbook to the page she had been struggling with. She placed the tablet beside it, finding the corresponding lesson in the folder. Maya Thompson didn't turn on the TV that night. She didn't wait up to cry to her mom about the wet shoes. For the first time in her life, she had a mission. She sharpened a pencil, opened a fresh waterproof notebook, and wrote the date at the top of the page. The transformation had begun. The next morning, the school bus ride was the same loud, chaotic mess it always was. Kids were shouting, throwing paper balls, and laughing. Maya usually shrank into her seat, trying to be invisible. Her old, torn backpack had always been a target, a symbol of her poverty that the meaner kids, led by a boy named Travis, liked to point out. "Hey, garbage girl," Travis yelled from 3 seats back. "Did you find a new bag in the dumpster yet?" A few kids snickered. Maya didn't flinch. She sat with her back straight, the black tactical pack resting on her lap. It felt heavy, solid, anchoring her to the seat. When she stood up to get off the bus, she swung the bag over one shoulder. It didn't sag. It didn't look flimsy. It looked aggressive. As she walked down the aisle, Travis stuck his foot out to trip her, a classic move. In the past, Maya would have stumbled, dropped her things, and scrambled to pick them up while everyone laughed. This time, she saw the foot. She didn't stop. She simply tightened her grip on the shoulder strap and braced her core, swinging the heavy bag slightly forward as she walked. The reinforced bottom of the tactical bag, filled with heavy textbooks and the steel box, collided with Travis's shin with a dull thud. "Ow!" Travis yelped, pulling his leg back and clutching his shin. "Watch it, freak." Maya didn't apologize. She didn't even look down. She kept walking, her head high, the bag secure on her back. A strange silence fell over the front of the bus. She wasn't the same scurrying mouse they were used to. She was carrying armor. Throughout the day, the backpack became a curiosity. It wasn't a fashion statement like the designer bags the rich kids had. It was utilitarian. It stood out because it looked so serious. In Mrs. Baker's history class, the fire alarm went off. A prank. Someone had pulled the lever. The sprinklers in the hallway malfunctioned, spraying water everywhere as the students evacuated. Kids were screaming, clutching their bags, trying to cover their expensive suede purses and canvas totes. Books were getting soaked. Maya walked through the spray calmly. She didn't run. She knew the rating of the canvas on her back. 600 deniers, waterproof coating. Outside on the wet grass, while other students were crying over ruined homework and soaked tablets, Maya unzipped her bag. The inside was bone dry. Her notebooks were crisp. The black box was safe. She took out her lunch, a simple sandwich, and sat on a dry patch of concrete. Across the street, parked in a beat-up Ford truck, a pair of eyes watched her through the rain-streaked windshield. Daniel took a sip of lukewarm coffee from a thermos. He saw her check the bag. He saw the calmness in her posture. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly. "Good check," he whispered to the empty cab of his truck. "Equipment functional." He wasn't stalking her. He was conducting overwatch. It was what he did. You don't drop an asset into a hostile zone without establishing a perimeter. He needed to know if she had the grit to use the tools. He shifted the truck into gear. He had to get to the garage. But for the first time in 6 years, his mind wasn't on the repetitive grinding of brake pads or the silence of his apartment. It was on a strategy. He knew something Maya didn't. The school district was announcing the Regional STEM Innovation Challenge next week. Usually, kids from Maya's district didn't enter. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the coaching. Daniel intended to change that, but he couldn't do the work for her. He could only provide the logistics. That evening, when Maya got home, she found a small, sealed envelope tucked into the side mesh pocket of the backpack. She hadn't seen him put it there. She opened it. Inside was a single index card. Objective, Regional STEM Challenge, date NOV 15, topic, Sustainable Engineering, research phase begins now. Maya stared at the card. She knew about the challenge. It was for the smart kids, the ones from the magnet schools across the river. She looked at the tablet. She looked at the card. Fear rose up in her throat. She wasn't an engineer. She was just a girl trying to pass math. But then she looked at the bag. It was sitting in the corner, upright, rigid, like a sentry standing guard. "Smart is dangerous," he had said. Maya sat down at the table. She opened the folder on the tablet labeled Engineering Basics. "Okay," she whispered to the empty room. "Research phase begins." The concept of a war room was foreign to Maya Thompson. In her world, problems were solved by ignoring them until they went away or by crying until you fell asleep. But the black tactical backpack sitting on her wobbly kitchen table demanded a different approach. It had been 3 days since she received the black box. 3 days of staring at the tablet screen until her eyes burned. The material Daniel had loaded onto the drive wasn't just difficult. It was crushing. It was a curriculum designed for the elite, for students who had private tutors and parents with PhDs. Maya had a mother who worked the graveyard shift and a radiator that clanked like a dying engine. She was trying to understand the basics of fluid dynamics for the sustainable engineering project. The words swam on the screen. Reynolds number, viscosity, laminar flow. She slammed her pencil down. It was impossible. She was 11. She was poor. She was stupid. That's what the world told her, and the math was proving it. She grabbed the backpack, intending to shove everything back inside and forget the mission. But as she lifted it, her hand brushed the rough texture of the canvas. It felt sturdy, unforgiving. She remembered Daniel's voice. Survival isn't overkill. It's necessity. That afternoon she waited at the bus stop. Not for the bus, but for him. Daniel Brooks arrived at 5:45 p.m., limping slightly, his hands stained with motor oil that no amount of scrubbing could fully remove. He saw her standing there. He didn't wave. He simply stopped a few feet away, lighting a cigarette before remembering who he was with, and putting it back in the pack. "Report," Daniel said. One word. Maya looked at her shoes. "I can't do it." Daniel didn't offer sympathy. "Can't do what?" "The project, the math, it's too hard, I don't understand the physics, I'm not smart enough." Daniel stepped closer. He towered over her, blocking out the gray Detroit sky. "The enemy is not the math," Daniel said, his voice low and gravelly. "The enemy is your panic." He pointed to the backpack on the bench. "In the teams, we have a saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You are trying to sprint up a mountain. You need to climb it one hold at a time. What is the first problem?" "I don't know what a vector is," Maya admitted, ashamed. "Then you don't move to step 2 until you own step 1, Daniel said. "You don't guess. You don't hope. You verify. If you don't know a word, you look it up. If you don't understand the definition, you look up the words in the definition. You break the problem down until it is small enough to crush." He looked her in the eye. "Panic is a reaction. Focus is a choice. Go home. Open the file. Read the first sentence. Do not read the second sentence until you can explain the first one to a 6-year-old. That is your new mission." "But the contest is in 10 days, Maya protested. "Then you don't sleep," Daniel said flatly. "You want to change your life, you think it happens on a schedule. You work until the work is done." He walked away. Maya went home. She didn't sleep that night. She cleared off the kitchen table. She took a blank sheet of paper from the waterproof notebook. She wrote vector at the top. She spent 3 hours on that one concept. She drew arrows. She calculated magnitude and direction. She watched the tutorial videos on the tablet 3 times, 4 times, 10 times. Around 3:00 a.m., the radiator clanking in the corner faded into background noise. The hunger in her stomach from skipping dinner faded. There was only the problem and the solution. When she finally understood it, when the logic clicked into place like a bolt sliding into a receiver, she felt a rush of adrenaline she had never experienced before. It wasn't the relief of escaping trouble. It was the power of conquering ignorance. She looked at the black backpack. It sat there, silent and heavy. It wasn't just a bag. It was a standard, and she was beginning to rise to meet it. School became a battlefield, but not in the way it used to be. Before, Maya was a victim. Now she was an operator behind enemy lines. She carried the Titan X backpack with a new posture. She didn't hunch. She walked with purpose. The other kids still whispered, but she barely heard them. She was too busy running calculations in her head. The first skirmish happened in Mr. Henderson's science class. Mr. Henderson was a tired man who had taught at the underfunded district school for 20 years. He had seen too many kids fail to have much hope left. When he assigned the pre-assessment for the STEM unit, he expected Maya to hand in a blank sheet or a doodle. Maya handed in 3 pages of calculations on hydraulic pressure variance. Mr. Henderson adjusted his glasses. He looked at the paper. He looked at Maya. "Maya," he said, his voice loud enough that the whole class stopped talking. "Come to my desk." She walked up, clutching the strap of her backpack. "Where did you copy this from?" Mr. Henderson asked, his tone weary. "Wikipedia? Chegg?" "I didn't copy it," Maya said calmly. "I calculated it. This is college-level physics, Maya. You're failing pre-algebra. Don't lie to me. It's better to admit you cheated than to insult my intelligence." Travis, sitting in the front row, snickered. She probably stole the answers like she stole that weird backpack. Maya felt the heat rise in her cheeks. The old Maya would have cried. The old Maya would have backed down. But Daniel's voice echoed in her head. "Do not guess, verify." Maya reached into her backpack. She didn't pull out the tablet. Daniel had warned her strictly about operational security, OPSEC. No one was to know about the black box. Instead, she pulled out the heavy steel ruler and a fresh piece of paper. "Give me a problem," she said. The class went silent. A student challenging a teacher. Mr. Henderson frowned. "Excuse me? Give me a problem. Fluid dynamics. If I can't solve it, I cheated. If I can, you apologize." Mr. Henderson stared at her. He saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen in a student in a decade. Grit. He wrote a complex equation on the chalkboard. It involved calculating the flow rate of water through a tapered pipe. It was hard. Maya walked to the board. She didn't hesitate. She picked up the chalk. Slow is smooth. Smooth is fast. She broke the problem down. She defined the variables. She set up the equation. The chalk clicked rhythmically against the slate. Dust flew. She worked for 4 minutes in total silence. When she stepped back, the answer was circled at the bottom. V2, 4.5 ms. Mr. Henderson looked at his answer key. He looked at the board. He looked at Maya. He was stunned. "That is... correct," he muttered. Maya didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply wiped the chalk dust from her hands onto her jeans. "I'm entering the regional challenge," she stated, "and I'm going to win." She walked back to her desk. Travis stuck his foot out again, instinctively. Maya didn't even look down. She stepped over it with precise, calculated movement, not breaking her stride. That afternoon, the rumors started. The poor girl with the combat backpack was a genius, or a witch, or a cyborg. Maya didn't care. She had established a perimeter. She had breached the wall of low expectations. But the real challenge was just beginning. The theory was done. Now she had to build the machine. Theory is clean, reality is messy. The sustainable engineering prompt required the students to build a working prototype of a device that could solve a community problem. Maya knew exactly what problem she wanted to solve. Water. In her apartment, the water sometimes came out brown. In the streets of Detroit, the rain flooded the sewers and backed up sludge into the basements. She wanted to build a portable, high-efficiency filtration system that didn't require electricity, something that could be used by homeless people or families like hers when the utilities were cut off. She had the design in her head. She had the blueprints on the tablet. But she didn't have the parts. The hardware store was expensive. The specialized filters she needed cost hundreds of dollars. It was Friday evening. Maya sat on the stoop of her apartment building, the black backpack beside her. She felt the crushing weight of poverty again. Knowledge wasn't enough if you didn't have resources. A beat-up Ford truck pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. "Get in," Daniel said. Maya grabbed her bag and climbed into the high cab. The truck smelled of old coffee and grease. "School bus driver says you made a teacher look stupid," Daniel said, keeping his eyes on the road. I just did the math, Maya replied. Good, but math doesn't drink water. You need a prototype. I can't afford the parts, Maya said, her voice small. We don't buy parts, Daniel said, turning the wheel sharp left. We scavenge. He drove them to an industrial scrapyard on the edge of town. It was a graveyard of metal, old cars, refrigerators, industrial piping. To most, it was trash. To Daniel, it was a supply depot. They got out. The sun was setting, casting long, jagged shadows over the piles of twisted metal. You need filtration, Daniel said, walking towards a pile of wrecked RVs. RVs have water pumps. They have mesh screens. You need tubing? Look at the engines. High-grade rubber hoses. You need a housing? PVC piping from the construction dump. For the next 4 hours, Daniel Brooks taught Maya Thompson how to see the world differently. He taught her that junk was just material waiting for a new mission. They found a canister from an old vacuum cleaner to serve as the main chamber. They found activated charcoal in the pet supply section of a discarded aquarium setup. They found fine mesh screens in the air intake of a totaled sedan. This is engineering, Daniel said as he pried a clamp loose with a screwdriver. It's not about the shiny lab. It's about making it work with what you have. Improvisation is the highest form of intelligence. They took the haul back to the garage where Daniel worked. It was closed for the night. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, Daniel cleared a workbench. Put on these, he said, tossing her a pair of safety goggles that were too big for her face. He didn't build it for her. He stood back, arms crossed. The seal needs to be watertight, he instructed. If you use too much glue, you contaminate the water. If you use too little, it leaks. Find the balance. Maya's hands were small, but they were steady. She cut the PVC. She layered the charcoal and the sand, which they had dug from a nearby construction site. She connected the hoses. She cut her finger on a jagged piece of metal. Blood welled up. She looked at Daniel, expecting him to rush over with a bandage. Is the finger still attached? He asked calmly. Yes. Then keep working. Wrap it with tape. The mission doesn't stop for a scratch. Maya bit her lip, wrapped a piece of electrical tape around her finger, and went back to work. She was learning a lesson that no textbook could teach. Resilience is physical. By midnight, the device looked like a monster. It was a Frankenstein of car parts, vacuum cleaners, and plumbing pipes. It was ugly. It looks terrible, Maya said, looking at the sleek 3D printed designs the other kids would surely have. Does it work? Daniel asked. He grabbed a bucket of dirty, oily water from the shop floor, water used to mop up grease. It was black and foul. Pour it in, he commanded. Maya hesitated. If this failed, everything failed. She poured the black sludge into the top funnel. They waited. The water moved through the layers of sand, charcoal, and mesh. It took time. Slow as smooth. Drip, drip, drip. From the bottom hose, clear liquid began to fall into a glass jar. Daniel held the jar up to the light. It was crystal clear. He sniffed it. No smell of oil. He didn't drink it, he wasn't reckless, but he nodded. Operational, he said. Maya felt a smile breaking across her face, a real smile, one that reached her eyes. She had built this, with her hands, with trash. Now, Daniel said, his face darkening slightly, we have a problem. What? Maya asked, her smile fading. The contest is next Tuesday, but I saw the eviction notice on your kitchen table when I dropped you off last week. Maya froze. She hadn't told him. She hadn't told anyone. My mom, she says she can fix it. She's waiting for a check. The check isn't coming, Maya, Daniel said gently but firmly. I know how the world works. The sheriff comes on Wednesday. The contest is Tuesday. You are fighting a war on two fronts. He leaned in close. If you win this contest, there is a cash prize. $5,000. That pays the back rent. That saves the apartment. Maya's eyes went wide. She didn't know about the money. She just wanted the grade. But if you lose, Daniel continued, you and your mom are on the street, and a backpack, no matter how good, can't hold a house. The stakes had just shifted. It wasn't just a science fair anymore. It was a battle for survival. "I have to win," Maya whispered. "No," Daniel corrected her. "You have to dominate. The judges won't want to give the prize to the girl with the garbage pile project. You have to make it so undeniable that they have no choice." He handed her the backpack. "Pack the prototype. Tomorrow we practice the presentation. Being smart isn't enough. You have to sell it." "And Maya?" "Yes?" "Stand up straight. You're carrying the Titan X. Act like it." As Maya walked out of the garage, the weight of the backpack felt different. It wasn't just textbooks and a tablet inside anymore. It was the future of her family. But unbeknownst to Maya, there was another threat looming. Travis, the bully, hadn't just been making fun of her. He had been watching her improvement with jealous eyes, and his father was one of the judges for the regional challenge. The war was about to get dirty. Monday, one day before the regional STEM challenge. The air in the school science lab was thick with the smell of ozone and nervous sweat. Students were putting the finishing touches on their projects: drones that planted seeds, solar-powered phone chargers, robotic arms. Maya placed her Frankenstein water filter on her designated table at the back of the room. Compared to the sleek 3D printed plastic of the other projects, hers looked exactly like what it was: a pile of trash scavenged from a scrapyard. It was ugly, wrapped in duct tape and smelling faintly of the auto shop. But it worked. She had tested it a dozen times over the weekend. It turned sludge into clear water. "Leave it here," Mr. Henderson said to the class. "The room will be locked until tomorrow morning so we can transport everything to the exhibition hall together. No one touches anything after the bell rings." Maya lingered for a moment, patting the rough PVC pipe. She felt a strange affection for the machine. It was her ticket out. It was the rent money. She walked out of the classroom swinging her black tactical backpack onto her shoulder. She felt good, confident. She didn't see Travis hiding in the janitor's closet just down the hall. She didn't see the look on his face, not just mean, but desperate. Travis was under pressure, too. His father, Mr. Sterling, was a wealthy contractor and one of the judges. He had made it clear that second place is the first loser. Travis knew his solar charger wasn't working right. He needed to eliminate the competition. 20 minutes later, the hallway was empty. Mr. Henderson had gone to the teacher's lounge. The door to the lab was locked, but Travis knew the trick with a credit card. The latch was old and loose. He slipped inside. He walked straight to the back table. He looked at Maya's machine. It looked pathetic to him. But he had heard the rumors. He had heard Mr. Henderson bragging to another teacher that the Thompson girl has built something revolutionary. Travis didn't smash it. That would be too obvious, too loud. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a tube of superglue and a handful of fine sand from the playground. He unscrewed the top cap of the filtration unit. He poured the sand into the intake valve, the one place where the water had to flow smoothly. Then he squeezed the superglue into the release mechanism at the bottom, sealing the output hose shut. "Let's see it flow now," he whispered. He screwed the cap back on. From the outside, the machine looked untouched. But inside, it was a brick. The physics were broken. The flow was choked. He slipped out of the room, leaving no trace but the invisible damage that would destroy Maya's future in front of 300 people. When Maya went home that afternoon, she practiced her speech in front of the mirror. She wore her best clothes, a clean white shirt Daniel had bought her, and her only pair of black pants. She felt ready. She didn't know she was walking into an ambush. Tuesday morning, the day of the challenge. The exhibition hall was a cavernous gymnasium in the wealthy district across the river. It was loud, bright, and intimidating. Banners hung from the ceiling. "Innovation is our future." Maya stood by her table. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Next to her, a girl from a private academy was setting up a hydroponic garden that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. Travis was 3 tables down. He was smirking. His father, Mr. Sterling, was walking around with a clipboard, shaking hands with other judges, looking important. "Okay, candidates," the lead judge announced over the microphone. "We will begin the live demonstrations in 10 minutes. Please ensure your prototypes are primed. Maya took a deep breath. She needed to do a final pre-check. Daniel's voice in her head. Check your gear, then check it again. She poured a small cup of water into the top funnel, just to moisten the filter elements before the big demo. She waited for the drip. Nothing happened. She frowned. She tapped the side of the canister. Maybe an air bubble? She poured a little more. Still nothing. The water sat in the funnel, stagnant. Panic, cold and sharp, spiked in her chest. She checked the bottom hose. It was dry. She tried to twist the release valve. It wouldn't move. It was frozen solid. She applied more force. Crack. The plastic handle of the valve snapped off in her hand. Maya stared at the broken piece of plastic. Her breath hitched. She realized with a sinking horror that the valve hadn't just stuck. It had been glued. She looked at the top funnel. The water wasn't draining because the intake was clogged with something gritty. Sand. It was sabotage. She looked up. Travis was watching her, pretending to adjust his tie, but the corner of his mouth was curled up. The tears came instantly. Hot, stinging tears. It was over. The rent money, the apartment, the future. It was all gone. She was just a poor girl with a broken pile of trash. She grabbed her backpack. She wanted to run. She wanted to hide in the bathroom and never come out. She turned to flee the hall and ran straight into a wall of canvas and denim. Daniel stood there. He wasn't supposed to be inside. Parents and mentors were supposed to stay in the gallery. But Daniel rarely followed rules he didn't agree with. He was wearing a clean flannel shirt, his hair combed back, looking uncomfortable but present. "Whoa," he said, catching her by the shoulders. "Hold fast, what's the situation?" "It's broken," Maya sobbed, burying her face in his chest. Someone glued it. It won't work. I can't do it. We're going to be evicted. I want to go home." Daniel didn't hug her back. He held her shoulders firmly, pushing her back so he could look her in the eye. "Calm down," he ordered. His voice wasn't soft. It was the voice of a commanding officer in the middle of a firefight. "Sit rep. What is the damage?" "The valve is glued shut. The intake is clogged with sand. It's dead, Daniel. It's over." Daniel looked at the machine. He looked at the judge's table, 5 minutes away from starting their rounds. He looked at Travis, who was laughing with his friends. Daniel's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what had happened. But anger wasn't a strategy. "Listen to me," Daniel said, leaning down close to her ear. "In the field, if your rifle jams, do you throw it down and cry?" Maya sniffled, shaking her head. "No. No, you clear the jam, or you use your sidearm, or you use a rock. You adapt. The mission remains. The equipment has changed." "I can't fix it in 5 minutes," Maya cried. "I need tools. I need solvent." "You don't need to fix that machine," Daniel said intensely. "You need to demonstrate the principle of filtration. What is the core mechanism? Gravity. And the charcoal layers," Maya stammered. "Does the plastic housing matter?" "No." "Does the valve matter?" "No. Just the flow control." "Right," Daniel said. He grabbed her black tactical backpack from the floor. He unzipped it. He dumped the books out onto the floor. "Your backpack," Daniel said. "It's waterproof, 600 denier. It has a hydration bladder pocket at the bottom with a hose port." Maya stared at him, confused. "Improvise," Daniel growled. "You have the filter material inside the broken canister. Cut it open. Transfer the charcoal and sand into the backpack. Use the bag as the funnel. Hang it from the stand. Gravity will push the water through the media and out the bottom port." Maya's eyes went wide. "Use the bag? It's the only asset you have left. Are you a victim, Maya? Or are you an engineer?" The loudspeaker crackled. "Judges are now moving to table 1. Maya wiped her face with her sleeve. The tears stopped. A cold clarity replaced them. She grabbed the heavy steel scissors from her supply kit. "I'm an engineer," she whispered. The scene at table 14 was chaotic. While other students stood politely by their pristine projects, Maya was hacking her prototype apart. She used the scissors to slice open the plastic canister. Charcoal and sand spilled onto the table. It looked like a disaster. People were whispering, "What is she doing?" Is she having a breakdown? Travis laughed openly now. Look at her. She's playing in the mud. Maya ignored them. She worked with feverish precision. She opened the main compartment of the Titan X backpack. She stuffed the bottom with the clean cotton rags she used for cleaning up. She scooped the layers of activated charcoal and sand from the broken canister and packed them into the bag, layering them carefully. Charcoal absorbs toxins. Sand filters particulates. Cloth catches the silt. She hung the heavy, bulging black backpack from the metal display stand where the canister used to be. It looked bizarre. A tactical bag hanging upside down, its bottom port open. She didn't have a hose. The old one was glued shut. She looked around. She grabbed the plastic casing of a pen, pulled out the ink cartridge, and jammed the hollow tube into the hydration port of the backpack to act as a spout. She finished just as the shadow of the judges fell over her table. Mr. Sterling, Travis's father, led the group. He looked at the mess of plastic shards on the table, then up at the bulging backpack. He sneered. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "The prompt was to build an engineering prototype, not to show us your laundry. What on earth is this?" Maya stood up. She was covered in charcoal dust. Her hands were black, but she stood straight. She stood in the at-ease position Daniel had taught her, feet shoulder-width apart, hands behind her back. "This is the Titan filtration system, sir," Maya said clearly. Her voice didn't shake. "It looks like a bag of dirt," Mr. Sterling scoffed. "I think we can move on to the next." "It is a modular, field-expedient survival filter," Maya interrupted him. The crowd gasped. "You didn't interrupt, Mr. Sterling. The original casing failed due to unforeseen structural damage," Maya said, glancing briefly at Travis, whose smile faltered. "But in the real world, casings break. Pipes burst. A true sustainable solution must be adaptable. My design proves that you don't need expensive machinery to purify water. You only need the correct filtration media and a vessel, even a school backpack." "That is a nice speech," another judge, a woman from the university, said kindly. "But does it work?" "May I demonstrate?" Maya asked. Mr. Sterling rolled his eyes. "Make it quick." Maya reached under the table. She didn't bring out a cup of tap water like the other kids. She pulled out a gallon jug of sludge she had brought from home, a mix of dirt, oil, and coffee grounds. It was opaque and disgusting. "The problem in our district isn't just tap water," Maya announced to the crowd, raising her voice. "It's backup. It's flood water. People need to drink when the system fails." She climbed onto a chair and poured the thick brown sludge directly into the open mouth of the backpack. The crowd murmured. "She's ruining the bag." Maya stepped down. She placed a clear glass beaker under the hollow pen tube sticking out of the bottom of the bag. Everyone waited. The thick canvas of the bag held the weight. It didn't leak. The water was being forced through the layers of rag, charcoal, and sand inside the bag. A single drop appeared at the tip of the pen. It hung there for a second, catching the light of the gymnasium. It fell. Plink. Then another. Plink. Then a steady stream. The water in the beaker was clear. Perfectly, sparklingly clear. The room went silent. The contrast between the foul sludge going in and the pristine water coming out was shocking. It was magic, performed with nothing but dirt and a backpack. "The Titan X bag is waterproof," Maya explained, her voice gaining strength. "It acts as a pressure vessel. The gravity provides the force. The charcoal removes the chemical impurities. The cost of this setup minus the bag is less than $3. The female judge stepped forward. She picked up the beaker. She held it up to the light. "It's cleaner than the tap water in the hallway," she murmured. She looked at Maya. "You built this after your original broke? A system that cannot be repaired is a system that will fail the poor," Maya said. She looked at Daniel, who was standing in the back, arms crossed, a rare, faint smile visible in his beard. "I learned that you have to be dangerous enough to adapt." Mr. Sterling looked furious. He couldn't deny the physics. The water was clear. His son's solar charger hadn't even worked inside the building because there was no sun. It's crude, Sterling grunted. It's brilliant, the university judge corrected him. It's exactly what sustainable engineering is about. Maya didn't look at Travis. She didn't look at Mr. Sterling. She looked at the clear water. She had done it. She had emptied the bag of books and filled it with ingenuity. But the war wasn't over. As the judges walked away to deliberate, Mr. Sterling leaned in close to the head judge. Maya saw him whispering, pointing at her, then pointing at the rulebook. She saw the head judge frown and nod. Maya felt a cold chill. They weren't talking about the science. They were talking about a technicality. Daniel saw it too. He uncrossed his arms. He began to move through the crowd, heading toward the judges' table. The silence of the ex-SEAL was gone. He was entering the fray. The air in the gymnasium was stagnant, heavy with the tension of unsaid words. Mr. Sterling was leaning over the main judging table, his finger jabbing aggressively at the rulebook. He was speaking in hushed, angry tones to the head judge, a stern man named Dr. Eris. Maya stood by her table, her hands trembling slightly, still covered in charcoal dust. The clear water in the beaker sat there as silent proof of her success, but it seemed like it might not matter. Daniel Brooks reached the table. He didn't shout. He didn't make a scene. He simply projected his voice with the diaphragm-deep resonance of a man used to giving orders over the roar of helicopter rotors. "Is there a problem with the entry, gentlemen?" Mr. Sterling whipped around. "This is a closed deliberation. Who are you?" "I am the logistics supervisor for Miss Thompson's project." Daniel lied smoothly, his face a mask of stone. "And I couldn't help but notice a debate regarding the structural integrity of the submission." "It's not about integrity," Sterling snapped, his face flushing red. "It's about Rule 4, Section B. All materials must be listed in the pre-approved budget." She listed a PVC canister. "She is using a backpack. That is a material violation. It's grounds for immediate disqualification." Sterling smiled a thin, cruel smile. He had found the loophole. He didn't care about the water. He cared about the win. Maya felt her knees go weak. He was right. The backpack wasn't on the list. Dr. Eris looked at the rulebook, then at Maya. He looked conflicted. "Technically, Mr. Sterling is correct. The bill of materials does not match the prototype." "The mission dictates the gear," Daniel said, stepping into the circle. He looked Sterling dead in the eye. In engineering, as in life, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, or in this case, with sabotage. The word hung in the air. Sabotage. Sterling's eyes widened. "That is a serious accusation." "I see glue residue on the original valve," Daniel said, pointing to the broken heap of plastic on Maya's table. "And I see sand in the intake, sand that matches the playground outside, not the filtration media she brought. Someone tampered with her device." He let his gaze slide over to where Travis was standing. The boy went pale and suddenly found his shoes very interesting. "However," Daniel continued, his voice dropping to a calmer, more reasoning tone, addressing the female judge from the university, "that is a matter for discipline. The matter of engineering is this. The backpack is not the machine. The backpack is merely the chassis. The machine is the filter media, the charcoal, the sand, the cloth. Those were listed. Those are present. She simply changed the housing to adapt to a catastrophic failure. If an engineer cannot adapt to failure, they are not an engineer. They are just a mechanic." The female judge, Professor Vance, nodded slowly. She looked at Sterling. "He's right, Harold," she said. "The prompt asked for a solution to water scarcity. It didn't ask for a pretty box. If we disqualify a child for fixing a broken prototype in real time, we are teaching them to give up when things break. Is that the lesson this institution wants to teach?" She turned to Dr. Eris. "I move to accept the entry as a field expedient modification. It counts." Dr. Eris looked at the clear water. He looked at Maya, standing tall despite her fear. He looked at Daniel, the silent guardian. "Motion carried," Dr. Eris said, closing the rulebook. "The entry stands." Mr. Sterling sputtered, but the decision was made. He stormed off, grabbing Travis by the arm and dragging him toward the exit. The sabotage was never officially proven, but the shame in Travis's eyes was confession enough. The award ceremony took place an hour later. Maya sat in the front row, clutching the empty, dirty backpack. Daniel stood at the very back of the hall, near the exit signs, leaning against the wall. Third place went to the hydroponic garden. Second place went to a drone project from a wealthy private school. And the first place, Dr. Eris announced, his voice booming through the speakers, for the Regional STEM Innovation Challenge, and the winner of the $5,000 educational grant. He paused. Maya held her breath. Goes to Maya Thompson for the Titan filtration system. The room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was a roar. The students, the parents, even the other teachers, they had all seen what happened. They had seen the girl cut open her project and save it. They loved the underdog. Maya walked up the stairs to the stage. Her legs felt like jelly. Dr. Eris handed her a heavy glass trophy and a giant cardboard check. $5,000. Maya took the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces. She saw her mother running down the aisle, crying tears of joy, having just arrived from her shift. Maya's voice cracked. She cleared her throat. I didn't think I could do this. I thought because I was poor, I was stupid. I thought because my equipment was broken, I was broken. She looked to the back of the room. She found the dark silhouette against the wall. But someone told me that smart is dangerous, she said, smiling through her tears, and that we don't pay back help with money. We pay it back by becoming the people who don't need help anymore. This is for my mom, and for the man who bought the backpack. She raised the trophy. When she looked back at the exit, the spot against the wall was empty. Daniel Brooks had slipped away. He didn't need the applause. The mission was accomplished. 15 years later. The neighborhood had changed. Gentrification had smoothed over some of the cracks in the sidewalks, and the old Miller's Stationery was now a trendy coffee shop. But the auto repair shop was still there, though under new management. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. A woman stepped out. She was 26 years old, dressed in a sharp navy business suit. She walked with a confidence that turned heads. She carried a sleek leather briefcase, but over her shoulder, looking strangely out of place, was an old, battered black tactical backpack. The canvas was faded to gray, and the straps were frayed, but it was still functional. Maya Thompson walked into the garage. "Can I help you, ma'am?" a young mechanic asked, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm looking for Daniel Brooks," she said. "Old Dan?" The mechanic chuckled. "He retired 3 years ago. Lives in a small cabin up by the lake now. Doesn't see many people." Maya got back in her car and drove. It took 2 hours to reach the cabin. It was small, isolated, and tidy. A perimeter of well-stacked firewood lined the side of the house. She knocked on the door. It took a moment. The door opened. Daniel Brooks was older now. His hair was completely white and he moved slower, his old war injuries finally catching up to him. He squinted at the woman on his porch. "I don't buy cookies," he grunted, starting to close the door. "I'm not selling cookies," Maya said. "I'm here to pay a debt." Daniel froze. He looked at her eyes. He recognized the determination. "Maya," he breathed. "May I come in?" He stepped aside. The cabin was sparse, filled with books and silence. Maya set the old backpack down on his kitchen table. The same sound, thud, as it had made on the school bus all those years ago. "You kept it," Daniel said, staring at the bag. "It's good gear," Maya smiled. "It lasts." She unzipped the main compartment. "I promised you I would pay you back," she said. "I told you I would bring you $2 a week." "I told you the currency was different," Daniel reminded her. "I know," Maya said. "I filled the bag." She reached inside. She pulled out a framed document. It was a diploma from MIT, master's degree in civil engineering. She placed it on the table. She reached in again. She pulled out a patent document. "This is the patent for the Titan II municipal water filtration system," she said. "It's being used in developing nations across 3 continents. It provides clean water to 2 million people a day." Daniel looked at the papers. His hands, usually so steady, shook slightly as he touched the patent. "And," Maya said, reaching into the bag one last time, "there is the matter of the $80. She pulled out a simple envelope. "I didn't bring cash," she said. "I bought the building." Daniel looked up. "What building?" "The old stationery store and the garage." "I bought them both," Maya said softly. "We turned them into the Brooks Innovation Center. It's a free after-school program for kids in the 4th District. We provide tutors, computers, and backpacks. Good ones. Ones that don't break." She slid a set of keys across the table. "You're the director, Daniel, if you want the job. The kids need someone to teach them that panic is a reaction, but focus is a choice." Daniel Brooks, the man who never cried, the man who had buried his emotions in the sands of foreign deserts, looked at the keys. He looked at the woman who had once been a shivering girl in the rain. He picked up the keys. He felt the weight of them. "Situation report," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Mission accomplished, sir," Maya replied, snapping a playful but respectful salute. Daniel stood up. He walked around the table and, for the first time, he pulled her into a hug. It was the embrace of a father who had seen his child survive the war and come home victorious. "You did good, kid," he whispered. "You did good." Inside the old black backpack, buried in the bottom pocket, the old steel ruler was still there. It had measured the distance from poverty to purpose, and for the first time in history, the measurement was perfect. The end. Educational takeaway. This story teaches us that resources do not define potential. Maya had nothing but trash and a backpack, yet she succeeded because she applied the principles of critical thinking and adaptability, the engineering mindset. Resilience. When the machine broke, she didn't quit. She adapted. This is called iterative design in engineering. Sunk cost. She didn't cling to the broken plastic canister just because she spent time on it. She abandoned the failure to find a new solution. Mentorship. Daniel didn't do the work for her. He provided the tools and the mindset. True help empowers people to help themselves. Thank you for watching Chatka Reading. If this story inspired you, please leave a comment saying, "I will adapt," and subscribe for more stories that change the way we see the world.